Good evening, curious listeners, and welcome to yet another Wilhelm Presents Frightening Tales and Other Weird Stories. I'm your host, Wilhelm. Each week I invite you to dim the lights and settle in as we explore a dark and unsettling tale of the paranormal. Stories conjured by authors from all over this world. If you dare to share a fiction of your own, submit it at frighteningtales.com. And should you find yourself still hungry, there's more than 120 previous episodes awaiting you patiently in the dark. Today's tale is written by Chandler Smith, who resides in a small town in southeast Texas, and has always loved scary stories, finding inspiration to be a writer through Stephen King and Cormac McCarthy. Chandler is greatly inspired by the familiarity you get with others when you're living in a small town, as well as his father, who's a retired law enforcement officer. He now lives with his fiancée and his cat. Here's his tale. A girl went missing in the night. Sometime during the night of December 2nd, 1992, Sadie Carmine disappeared from her home. Her parents woke up to find that her bed was empty. The covers tossed aside, her imprint still in the mattress. The front door was wide open. A trail of footprints in the snow led from the Carmine's front door straight into the woods. The prints could only be left by Sadie. She was barefoot, and she was alone. A search party was immediately assembled to look for her, and I jumped at the chance to volunteer. We don't have a lot of people in this small town, but we do look after one another. I grew up with Sadie's dad, Robert. I love him and his wife, Angela. They are the family that I never had. They're good people. I had wanted to find his little girl. Our search party was organized by the chief of police. He assigned us our partners at midday and sent us on our way into the woods. We were to fan out in those woods that she ran into. We were supposed to return when the sun came down, but I already was determined to stay out as long as possible to find her. The chief assigned us our partners at midday and sent us on our way out into the woods. I was paired with Nick Middleton. Nick's a good guy, but he talks too much for my liking. The search party fanned out soon after. We were in a big group for a while, crunching through the snow. The wind was biting cold, tearing into our insides and chilling us to the bone. The sound of our boots crunching under the blanket of snow that covered the forest floor echoed off the trees. One pair broke off and went their own way, then another, and then another, until Nick and I were all alone. The woods were still. Not even a bird. The only sounds were our breaths fogging out of our mouths in the cold air, and the crunch of snow and frozen leaves under our boots. As we walked, I remembered the day the Carmines came home with Sadie. I was there to greet them, and I was the first non-family member to hold her. From then on, we were family. Her little hands always grabbed my fingers and refused to let go. Her little laugh, her youthful joy, she was the perfect kid any parent would ask for. Now, it was my job to bring her home. A few minutes into our search, I saw Nick mark a tree where we had passed with something. "What is that?" I asked. "It's glow-in-the-dark paint, so we don't get lost," he said with a smile. I gotta hand it to him. He came prepared. We marched on further into the trees, Nick, as per usual, talking his way into oblivion with every passing step. "Why would she leave? Chief said there was only one set of footprints. I just don't understand," Nick said as we took a break under a dead tree. I handed him my thermos of coffee with a shrug. He took it from me gratefully, taking a long swig. The truth is, I didn't know what to say. Sadie was a well-behaved, polite kid. How would I know what compels an 8-year-old girl from a good home to run off into the frigid night? Nick handed me the thermos back as he wiped his mouth with the back of his gloved hand. "It's too damn cold to be doing all this. I can tell you that much right now," he said as he readjusted his hat. Without another word, we were moving again. Deeper into the forest we went, calling Sadie's name as loud as we could. I knew that the lower the sun got, it would get colder and colder. She wouldn't last long out here in just her pajamas. I knew that. I wanted so badly to find her and get her back to her parents. I couldn't bear to see the look on their faces if I failed them. An hour passed. 2, 3, 4. Nothing. All of our shouting, all of our marching didn't get us any closer to finding Sadie. "Stop, man. Come on. Let's just take a second to breathe," Nick said, exhaustion and annoyance plain in his voice. "What?" I say, finally coming to a stop in front of him. "We haven't taken a break in forever. We'll be no good to her if we die of exhaustion out here," he said, as he took a seat on a frozen tree stump. He breathed into his gloved hands and rubbed them together. "If you're tired, man, you can just go back. I can go alone," I said to him. He produced a bottle of water from his bag and looked at me. "I get it, Jody. I really do. But we have to stop. Maybe one of those other search duos found her already. We're gonna freeze to death if we're not careful." If we are at risk of freezing to death out here, then she doesn't have much of a chance. When the sun goes down, it may be too late for her. I'm gonna keep moving. I turned away from him and continued my trek into the woods. I didn't hear him say anything in response, but I did hear his quick footsteps catch up to me and fall in tandem behind me. We could see the sun sinking behind the trees. The light continued to drop. "Hey," he said behind me, "why haven't we seen anybody else out here?" He was right. We hadn't seen any other searchers for hours, which wouldn't be that shocking considering the huge amount of dense forest we were tasked with searching. What was shocking was the noise, or rather, the lack of noise. Even in winter, these woods were a hub of wildlife activity. It was at that moment I realized that we hadn't seen anything or heard a sound since we entered the threshold of the forest. I didn't like it. Why haven't we heard at least one of the other searchers call out her name? How far apart did we fan out? Nick said, his voice wavering. The sun was now under the horizon, It was dark. You don't know what dark is until you've been in the woods. We pulled out our flashlights and ran the beams of light in front of us. Trees, more menacing in the night. Silence. Until I heard it, very faint. I strained my ears to listen more intently. I needed to make sure I heard what I thought I heard. And then it happened again. Crying. A little girl's crying. Nick clearly didn't hear it. "We've done all we can, Jody. We need to get..." "Shh." He stopped talking and listened. A wail met our eardrums through the darkness. It was louder this time. It droned at us in the night. It was a single note. It, at first, sounded as it should. But then it started to change. The wailing began to mix with notes of other things, as if the sobs were coming from some kind of animal. A mountain lion? It cried out into the void, and then, all of a sudden, the woods fell silent once again. If Sadie was making that noise, she did not appear within our flashlight beams. "What the fuck?" Nick whispered. A chill went up my spine. All of a sudden, I was aware of the temperature around me. It was bitterly cold. "Sadie?" I called out into the night. "Sadie!" Silence. "Sadie!" I called out again, beginning to walk towards where the noise came from. I shined my flashlight in between two trees and was not greeted by another tree. A few more steps forward, more space in between the trees. I quickened my pace and came face to face with a clearing in the woods. The moon was out, barely illuminating what was before us in the dark. I could make out the silhouette of a building. It was sitting by itself. It had to have been about 100 yards from the tree line. "I've never seen this before," Nick noted as he looked around. I pointed at the building. "She's got to be in there." "Jody, did you hear that? That was not Sadie. It was an animal or something. We need to go back and bring the rest of the searchers here with us." "It has to be her. She was crying. I'm going to look in there. You can come with me or not. It's up to you." Without heeding any of Nick's protestations, I broke out into a sprint towards the structure. My breath was fogging up in front of me. My aching feet pounded the frozen grass. I didn't have time to ask why there were no trees growing here, how Sadie ended up so deep into the woods, or why her cries sounded like they did. There was a scared little girl in that building, and I had to... My body hit the earth beneath me with a crash. All the air was knocked out of my lungs as I struggled back onto my knees. In front of me lay my flashlight. The bulb cracked, blinking irregularly. It would ignite for a second and then go out. Ignite, go out. Shit, I thought to myself as I got up on my feet. I looked behind me to see what had tripped me. In the brief flashes of the light, I could make out the shape of a teddy bear, frozen to the ground. I turned back towards the building. I could now see where Sadie was taking refuge. A church. It was desolate and run down. Its wooden walls looked like they were about to buckle under the weight of the roof. The door at the front of the church was ajar. In the brief flashes of light that illuminated just inside the door, there was someone. I was too far away to make out any features, but in the half-second of light, there was a silhouette. And in the next, it was gone. Hello? Sadie! I called out as I slowly approached the door. It's Mr. Jody. You can come out. I waited for a second. I expected to hear Sadie's little voice reply to me, to call for help. Silence was the only reply. I slowly made my way to the door and pushed it open. Its rusted metal hinges cried out as it swung open. Darkness greeted me through the doorway, as if light had never existed in this place. The quick blinks of light from my broken flashlight showed an open chapel. Pews, long discarded, had been flipped and tossed around the chapel with abandon. The centerpiece at the altar, a rotted wooden figure of Jesus. I took a step into the chapel. The further I walked down the aisle, the more I became aware of the cold penetrating into my blood. The whole place reeked of damp, aged wood. A powerful smell of decay that had me on the brink of retching. I quickly covered my nose with my hand to give my senses a relief. The floorboards creaked with every step, as if my weight was about to finally break them after all these years. Why was this here? Who built this place? Was it colder in the church than outside? These questions would have to be asked later. I needed to find Sadie and get her warm. Sadie? I said quietly, looking around the room as much as my limited light would allow. I looked at the Jesus statue, his wooden face melting with rot, his mouth stretched and contorted as if screaming. The floorboards behind me creaked, and I quickly spun around in just enough time to see the door slam shut. My flashlight bulb gave out and popped. I was now in a world of complete darkness. I stood there, only blackness in front of me, listening. Silence. Hello? I found myself saying, involuntarily. I knew something wasn't right. Sadie isn't here. If she was here, she would have come to me. And then I heard it. A giggle. A sweet little girl's laugh called to me in the blackness of the church. My blood froze. That wasn't Sadie. It sounded like her, but I knew in my heart that wasn't Sadie. It sounded like her, but I knew in my heart that wasn't the little girl I came in here to find. The laughter was tinged with malice, a putrid display of ravenous joy. It was right in front of me. I know for a fact the door was across the room from me, but that thing was in the way. My eyes wouldn't adjust to the darkness. I was walking blind, my hands extended out in front of me, desperate to find a wall. One step forward, and then another. Something brushed against my back. I swung my arm around to push back whatever touched me, but my hands meant nothing but the frigid air. Then came another laugh. A boy. It came from my right. From my left, a girl joined his laughter. Then another began to laugh from behind me. Then another in front. Their laughter grew louder and louder, their heckling morphing into screams, joining together in a cacophony of inhuman suffering, like goats being tortured. I placed my hands over my ears to try my best to not hear them, but it was futile. The sound bore into my skull. I screamed. Something in my mind told me if I didn't make it to the door, I would die in this chapel. As quickly as it began, the screaming stopped. The only sounds were my panicked breathing and something else breathing right in front of my face. Its hot, putrid breath blew straight into my face. It was silently laughing at me, breathing its vile stench of rotten fruit with abandon, the heat of its body radiating the once frigid air, like stepping into the warm glow of the fireplace after being locked out in the cold. I saw nothing but darkness in front of me. I pressed my hand into the wall behind me, trying to put as much space between me and it as possible. It slithered back across to my right, pushing through the overturned pews with a wet scrape. There was silence. My hands pressed into the wall behind me, searching for any way that I could orient myself in the dark room. The walls felt warm, covered in a mucousy slime. Bile built up in the back of my throat as my hands slid easily along the wood. There was no sound in the room. The beating of my heart in my ears, the only thing breaking the unholy silence. And then it began to speak. "It's Mr. Jody. It's Mr. Jody." It was trying to recreate my voice. It wasn't perfect. It sounded as if a dying cat was trying to impersonate me. "It's Mr. Jody." Every attempt at mimicking my voice, the being snarled and coughed like a smoker's laugh, the wet, billowing voice edging ever closer to my ear with every attempt. "It's Mr. Jody." It was getting closer, toying with me as it practiced its devilish trick on me, hulking, wet footsteps echoing through the desolate chapter. "It's Mr. Jody." It was me. The sweat pouring out of my body felt frozen on my skin. The tears cascading out of my eyes fell down my cheeks in slow, freezing streams. I slinked along the wall to my left. I had to make it to the door. With every minuscule step I took, the wooden floor beneath me squelched. 1 step, 2 steps. Every step I took away, it took a step closer. Why won't my eyes adjust to the dark? Come here. Come here. Come here. It kept repeating to me in Sadie's voice, every word broken up with a wheezing, phlegmy inhale from within its vile existence. My arm came in contact with the adjacent wall. With a wet plop, I finally laid eyes on the door, the moonlight coming in from the other side, illuminating the edges of my salvation. I leapt towards the door, reaching for freedom from this hell, when all of a sudden, I was slammed into the wall, pinned there by a heavy body of my tormentor. My breath was knocked out of me, leaving me gasping for air, unable to move against the gelatinous wall, its reeking hot breath blowing into my ear as it leaned close to me. Wheezing a mocking laugh, I felt its hand reach up and slide its putrid, slimy fingers all along my jaw and cheek, leaving a trail in the wake of its repulsive touch. The appendages slowly followed the trail of my cheek and slithered their ways into my nose. My face was on fire as I felt it explore the inside of my sinuses, but no cry could come from my mouth. No sound could be heard inside the squelching of its exploration, and the satisfied crackling from its mouth. The door to the church creaked open, accompanied by a familiar voice. "Jody? Are you in here?" Nick called out into the room. I could see Nick silhouetted against the moonlight in the doorframe. His eyes met mine, and he froze. All the color drained from his face. As quickly as it started, it dropped me to the ground and ran into the dark recesses of the chapel, leaving me in a heap on the ground. Nick ran over to me and helped me up, his arms wrapped around my shoulders as he helped my legs take one step after another. The adrenaline pushed us past the entryway, out into the biting cold. We didn't look back as he escorted me out of the church. Across the field, I was able to steady myself on my own 2 feet. From there, we ran and ran and ran. His glow-in-the-dark paint on the trees guided us towards our salvation. We finally made a stop, both of us hunched over, hands on our knees trying to catch our breath. My nose and throat still burned from the probing I was subjected to. He looked at me, eyes wide, breath shaky. "You're bleeding. All out of your nose." I brought my hand up to my face and wiped it clean. And that was all that was said between us as we followed Nick's glow-in-the-dark trail back to our starting point. We emerged from the trees and were greeted with a crowd of people, fellow searchers, neighborhood folks wearing their nightwear alike. They were all crowded around something, yelling, shouting for something, but I could not hear what. Nick and I exchanged glances before trudging our tired legs to the crowd. Nick tapped on a fellow searcher's shoulder, and I think his name was Samuel. "What's going on? Where have you guys been? They found her an hour ago. She's alive." I couldn't believe it. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I pushed my way through the crowd. I had to see for sure. Sure enough, there she was, in the arms of her father. I could tell when he saw me. He had a look of utter joy, smiling ear to ear at me. I didn't see it. All I could see was little Sadie Carmine, her face contorted in an inhuman grin. My eyes met hers, and there was no life in them. She giggled.
Thank you, loyal listeners, for venturing into the dark with me tonight.
Return next week for another tale lurking just beyond the veil. If you enjoyed your journey with me, support my work. Like, subscribe, rate, or leave a comment where possible. Any of it helps. Most of all, share frightening tales and support the authors who dared to dream these machinations. Until next time, when a new tale creeps across the airwaves, listen closely if you're brave enough.